I think we're ready, so okay, thank you. This morning, the Oversight Committee is meeting to make a couple of, a consideration, one consideration actually. And the other consideration is the 2021 independent audit of city financials. So first, I'd like to call the roll of attendance. Jake Gilbert.
Here.
Scott Willis.
Here.
Joe Edwards here. And also with us is Ann, your last name?
Poindexter.
Poindexter, I'm sorry. Ann Poindexter, who is the city council attorney, in consideration of such things. I have done some examination of requirements, and I went to the State Board of Accounts site, and I also spoke with a lady who's in charge of these items, and her name is Jennifer Marshall, Director of Procured Audits. Her phone number, and I'll give that to you later, but her phone number is 317-232-2513. And we are considering an independent audit of the city's finances on an annual basis, and there are two options that we have if we seek this independent audit. They are under the control, even though they are independent, they are under the control of the state examiner. It says, first, the state examiner may allow the engagement of a private examiner to the extent the state examiner determines necessary to satisfy the requirements of Indiana Code Article 511. It's 511.1.7b. I'll give this to you, Ann. Second, a private examiner is subject to the direction of the state examiner while performing examinations under Indiana Code Article 511. Third, the state examiner authorizes the engagement of a private examiner to perform an examination under Indiana Code Article 511. The examination and report must comply with the Uniform Compliance Guidelines, which is part of our oversight, established by the State Board of Accounts under basically that same code section, Indiana 511.124. Fourth, if an audited entity subject to examination under this Indiana code engages a private examiner, the contract with the private examiner must require the examination and report to comply with the Uniform Compliance Guidelines established by the State Board of Accounts. Finally, if proposals for performing a private examination of an audited entry are required, an entity may not request such proposals unless the request has been submitted to and approved by the State Board of Accounts first. In addition, Uniform Compliance Guidelines require that contracts agreed upon between an audited entry, which would be us, and a private examiner be submitted and approved by the State Board of Accounts. So you can see they're going to keep pretty tight control over the type of work and the output that work has brought. A private examiner engaged under this code must hold a valid certificate for a certified public accountant. In other words, they must be an approved CPA or public accountant, which that's kind of a dying breed accountant, but certified public accountant is what we would want, I think. And the permit would be issued under Code Chapter 25215 in order to provide applicable reports on financial or attested statements of an audited entry. Individuals and firms not holding a certificate are prohibited from issuing the report. In summary, before engaging a private examiner, an audited entity must obtain the prior approval of the state examiner. 2, submit any required request for proposals to the State Board of Accounts for approval prior to issuing the request. And 3, ensure the contract with the private examiner requires the examination and report to comply with the uniform units established by the State Board of Accounts. 4, submit the agreed upon contract for approval by the State Board of Accounts. And 5, ensure that the private examiner has the required certificate and permit issued under this Indiana Code Section 25. Failure to follow the steps outlined above will prevent the accountant from being considered a private examiner. This directive is amended from time to time. Now, that's, to me, a lot of words, so I wanted to drill down on that just a bit to see what the time frames were and what we must do. First, we must initially, as a body, as a city council, request that this be done, and it must be voted upon to be done. There are 2 levels of examination. Option 1 is a complete opt-out. If you choose option 1, which is the very formal examination, you must stay with that every year. In other words, the State Board of Accounts charges a city $75 an hour to do this. Well, I think they charge them, it may be 95. I'm a little confused about but it's not very much when a day, not per hour, but per day. Well, you wouldn't get much done for $95 a day. But, if you go to an outside firm, it's going to be a good deal more than that. But once you receive permission for this opt-out, you're out. You have to request permission to get back in and have the State Board of Accounts do it. So we ought to know where we're driving here. If we want out, really out, we got to stay out, pretty much, and let an outside firm do this. I said, we don't want to blow any stoplights as far as timely filing a request to do that. And she says you haven't. But she says the first thing that you must do is formally request this, with the state examiner. I said, well, when is the first, what's the timetable? And she says, for the 2021 year, you should have done this by June, 180 days prior to the start of the year. Well, see, we're way behind the 8 ball for 2021. Now, there is another option, but, well, let me back up on that. She says that if you request, the state examiner often gives relief to that date. In other words, we're not springing anything on anybody, really, by asking this. And she says that, if you request to do this, you probably could get, relief from that. And so this would be up to us and then the city council as to whether we're going to request this relief for a formal opt-out. My question would be, the bigger question in this is do we want to stay outside all the time? If we go outside, we're gonna be outside.
Well, I think if you just look at our sister cities, they've all opted out and they're going through the private sector. I mean, this is a common practice, and I think as we grow as a city, this makes sense. It's more thorough. It's actually less impact on our clerk treasurer, because they say actually the time that they're on deck is a lot shorter than what the SBOA does. But we do have to budget for it.
Yeah.
You know, that will be a cost that will exceed what we're currently paying.
But let me explain, there is another option too. And I was surprised at this. There is another option, and because we are a recipient of federal funds for roundabouts and such as that, there must be a federal, they are bound to audit entities such as us to make sure that we have complied and properly used the federal money. So the federal audit is going to be a part of whichever way we go. But we can opt into another plan that they have, and this might even cover, she was saying, this might even cover 2020, where they have lined up some firms, but primarily I think it's Crow Chiswick, which is a good firm, to do audits of units like us. Now, what they do is Crow Chiswick charges more than $95 a day, but the state subsidizes the basic, so the rates to us are the same. And the reason they are doing this is because they are so far behind in what they are doing. They just they're not up to date, and they need to get some of this done. Well, I have no problem with Crow Chiswick. I had some experience with them when I worked for Farm Bureau, but that's been 23 years ago, 22 years ago now. But this second option, what I was thinking, this second option might be she said it's very possible, and she almost encouraged me to seek this for our 2020 because they have not started the 2020 audit yet. And that we could, go with this would be under the direction of the State Board of Accounts.
So what's the procedure in doing that then? Obviously, we don't have to go through these 10 steps here. Is it just simply letting them know we want to use that, or is there a formal resolution?
I think that's pretty much, we'd have to have a resolution. But what I might suggest, and I don't know, this was revealed to me when I learned the clerk was having trouble getting a hold of the right people, so I thought I'd give it a try, and I think I found the right person.
We hit the jackpot.
I think that we might try, now I would suggest, because of 2020, the reporting standards are still the same on either audit. In other words, they gather the administration together, which would be the mayor and whoever he would want to be there, and members of the council who would want to be there. And they all hear it at pretty much the same time. And I think what we might do is start out with 2020 with Crow Chiswick, and then I'm sure they have a list of preferred firms they want to do. And Crow Chiswick's not the only one. They would be the only one under that second option. But the first option, we would have, we would have to start on 2022. Well, we could probably get 2021 covered in that by asking for the 180-day notice prior to the start of the year to be waived. In other words, we just say we're not aware of those timeframes, and we want to start, and I think by June we have to have a real formal request into them to do that. So I didn't have a lot of time to talk to her. I was going to be late here, and I think I walked in about 10 o'clock. But my suggestion would be, and I don't know, there may be ups and downs to this, but the first one we seek would be their 2020 option. we would get started on 2020 with Crow Chiswick. And then, in the meantime, we set up this other one where we would put out a request for proposal to their list of firms, is the way I understand it. In other words, they have people that meet their standards. And so they're gonna ask us to stick by that, accounting firms. I'm sure the same for Fishers or,
Yeah.
she mentioned the audit, the city audit of Indianapolis, which would be far more complicated than we would ever want to, I mean, ours would ever be, I assume. But she says they have been doing this for 30 years. They've been, you know, with a private firm or firms. I don't know which, but I don't know. Do the rest of you have any thoughts about that?
I personally, I think going back to 2020 and using that makes a lot of sense. I think moving forward, we should at least explore through an RFP the option of an independent audit. You know, I've talked to city councilors from Fishers and Noblesville, and they both confirm that this is really the way to go moving forward as we grow as a city. Now, the RFP piece is really the fourth step. So we've got several resolutions we have to complete first before we get to that. But I would recommend we at least get started. We can always stop it, but it takes Fishers, and they've been doing this for years, about 30 to 45 days to get through this process. I'm thinking it's gonna take us 60 to 75 because it's new. So I think we would want in this next council meeting, I know Ann's already prepared the first resolution we have to get through, that we put that in front of the council for a vote, either us or the finance committee, whoever, and we get that ball rolling. Again, if the RFPs come back and it's a dollar amount we don't feel comfortable with, we can always pull back, but we can't accelerate it more than, because there's several milestones we have to hit and there's timelines that we just can't accelerate.
Would we want to put the date as 2020, in other words, consideration of a 2020 independent audit, rather than, because that's what it says on there, 2021. We're still considering that, but I don't know that this requires a lot of special consideration. I think they're looking to get their work caught up.
Yeah, I think 2021's already sailed. We can go back and have them use their preferred vendor, but I don't think we can do and correct me if I'm wrong, or Jake, I don't think we can start over on the independent audit piece. We've already missed that milestone.
Okay. But we could request, and she thought we would get it, a opt-out, or not an opt-out rule, but a deference to,
Yes.
I think we ought to do that. We ought to
I
try
agree.
it.
And
And
you're
if we
gonna say-
can't, well, we just have to go back to, because if we don't get that opt-out, the first year we're going to be able to do it is 2022.
I have a couple questions. So first, what about scope of audit? So Crow Chiswick, are they just doing the same thing the State Board of Accounts does? Since the State Board of Accounts is using them, is it the exact same scope? It's not gonna cost us anything different, so having an independent, sure, that makes sense, but like, we're not gonna get anything different, are we?
That is correct. So they're basically just taking the load off the state. It's gonna be the exact same audit
Sure.
and the exact same cost. Is that correct, Ann?
That's correct. I mean, I already have some entities that did not ask to have the outside auditors, but who have been visited by the outside auditors because the State Board of Accounts is trying to catch up. But it is the same type of audit. It is not broader, it's not deeper. It is the same audit. It's just outside consultants helping the State Board of Accounts get caught up.
So for 2020, we can make that decision. That sounds like an easy decision. Nothing gained, nothing lost. Doesn't cost us any different. We're gonna get the
That's
same
correct.
information, just someone independent.
Yeah, it's
For
the 20
2021, even
the
if we can get the forgiveness on the date that we missed, I guess my question would be the budgeted funds to pay for that audit that we have not
We've not budgeted.
we have not budgeted, so I don't know that it's possible for us to get an independent audit for 2021, Joe, if we have not budgeted the money to do so. Now, for 2022, we obviously can, and we need to get that ball rolling. So if we decide that's what to do, that's also an easy decision to get moving. But really with 2021, it seems like our options are either do this pro-Chiswick model or ask for that forgiveness of date, but even if we get that, I don't know that we can pay for it, so
Well, yeah,
I'm
and
not
then you
sure it's
factor
really an
in
option.
the forensic audit, you factor in all the legal fees being spun around here. I think it would be a mistake to add another cost on another audit. I think we just,
In 2021.
in 2021, let's regroup 2022.
But
let's
actually,
budget it in.
the 2021 audit will be done in 2022, if I'm thinking right.
Yeah,
So we could actually budget the 2021 audit in 2022, right? So,
Yeah, if I may, yeah, so any financial activity that's occurring in '21 is reviewed or audited in '22, so in the budget process that we're about to embark on for 2022, we can budget that very thing, so you won't expend those funds until next year. So
That
I
answers
think
my question
to
then.
your point earlier, the budget is set for any activities that are going to consider 2020.
Yep. So we could do it if they gave us the date forgiveness based on
yeah, if they give us-
that. So it sounds like you need to find out if we can get that date forgiveness, whether it's even an option.
I just learned this in about the last half hour,
Okay.
but I learned that the clerk was having some trouble, you know, this windstorm tore up a bunch of stuff, and people are working from home, and their phones aren't working, and so forth, but
so Ann, could we move forward in the next council meeting with a resolution for 2021 and 2022 in the hopes that the state gives us relief? Or should we just take one at a time?
You could move forward both ways if you wish to, and in fact, you know, several ways. You could have a resolution for the next meeting asking that you be allowed and the State Board of Accounts assign their outside consultants that they're using now. So same audit, new auditors. At the same time,
that's actually 2020. Instead of
did I
20.
say 2021?
You said
I
yeah.
meant 2020, forgive me.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So for 2020, you could do that in a resolution at the next meeting. For 2021, you could start the process, and I would say you'd need to start it at your next meeting, because you are gonna have to ask them to waive one of the statutory requirements. And that statutory requirement is that you act 180 days ahead of time. Well, you're not 180 days before 2021. It is encouraging that she told Mr. Edwards that they might waive that, likely would waive that, but there's nothing that compels them
That's right.
to waive that. If you're interested in it so that you can budget for it next year, Joe said, you know, you need to first start with a resolution saying that you want to opt out. You can actually do several things at a time. I mean, you can talk to the State Board of Accounts ahead of time. You can do the resolution that you want to explore move forward with the procedure to opt out, establish the audit committee, appoint the members, you know, start the RFP. You don't have to accept any of those proposals when you get them, but then you'll know the hard numbers. I presume that you would send that RFP out to the State Board of Accounts short list. The audit committee then is responsible for ranking those proposals. And Joe's right, there's, you know, factors that they have to use, and only certain firms are qualified. But assuming you follow all of those procedures, then the audit committee ranks the proposals. Assuming you have enough, you're supposed to submit the top 3 to the council for the council to select from. You could do a conditional selection that, you know, subject to State Board of Accounts approval on you opting out, that that's the entity you want and that you're comfortable with the number. And if you can get this done fast enough, because I know you've already started budgeting, then have those dollars in the 2022 budget for the 2021 audit.
Right. I think we, you know, the big audit, the big one, which is probably the good one, we need to consider, you know, that's a long-range consideration. Do you want, you know, I think it's worked well for Fishers, worked well for Noblesville. It would probably work well for us, really. Because we have so many disparate entities like RDC, RDA, all these things that are spinning around out there and doing, you know, what they want, what they need to do, really, to make things happen, and they need to be brought into all that, you know, sphere. I think this is basically what Carmel did, same thing. I don't know who does their audit, but we would need to choose, and there is an audit committee. I think there's an administration appointee, there is a council appointee, and then there's an appointee that, I don't know who the third appointee is.
Council appoints somebody from the council, and then the council selects a CPA,
Okay,
and the mayor would make an appointment to the audit
Okay.
committee.
so we would select a CPA, and the council would make an appointment, and the mayor, that's on the big one, that's on the, I call it the big one, the formal one where we,
That is correct. What I was just describing is the audit committee. That would be the composition of the audit committee for the council.
okay, but we can make the request, we can, since an audit committee does not exist now. And so we are structured as an oversight committee, and there's other things to do. By the way, Jake, I couldn't make my printer print it this morning. I even tried to find it. I found it on my old computer, but I couldn't make it print. But we've got other things to do.
Sure.
Besides this. Once this gets rolling, it's kind of automatic after a while.
I can talk to a couple of those things if you want me
Okay,
to,
go
Joe.
ahead, Go ahead.
So just, you know, it's been a little while for the oversight. The last meeting I believe we had, the clerk talked about loosely, without too many specifics, just some of the oversight duties. But in general, just to kind of put back in front of the public, the internal controls, we want to make sure that all of our processes and procedures do everything possible to reduce and eliminate any chances of graft, theft, just anything below the line with the taxpayer dollars. So the environment overall, the control environment, making sure there's not corruption, intimidation, so forth and so on, risk assessment. Obviously, we have to be careful and make sure that we are eliminating opportunities for theft and anything, control activities, separation of duties, multiple people signing checks, information and communication, and not being loose and sharing information with the wrong people, and then just the monitoring, overall monitoring of activities. So that's, those things are in place. We need to make sure that as an oversight committee that we are overseeing that those different controls remain in place, that they're being taken advantage of, that we're not loose in any one area. Those are some things that will come out from the audit that we are currently, enduring with Taft. That was part of the agreement anyway, was that we were going to find out, are there any shortfalls in our processes? Sometimes you can't see the forest from the trees, and when people have been in place for a long time, maybe you're doing things the best you know how, but there's even better ways we can do it to make sure we're protecting the people and protecting the dollars. So that's ultimately part of oversight, and that would be forthcoming to Joe's point.
So the formal name of this group, we're the oversight committee, but we are to adhere to the standards, the uniform forget what, uniform information, there's about four words that, the first one is uniform. Uniform control standards, basically. And that covers a lot of real estate sometimes. But I think the first thing that we need to get rolling is this audit. And now that I've found who I need to find, it was pretty quick. I think that we're on the right path. But I would want you to know that it's gonna be kind of a complicated path initially to get, to make sure we meet all these things. And I want you to have that too.
We've got a good attorney to keep us in line.
Yeah, but the first thing I would do is is there anybody that would make a motion that we consider a 2021 independent audit for the city's financials, if we can get the time waiver from the State Board of Accounts.
So Joe, I got a question before that we do that. Is the Oversight Committee taking the lead on this, or is the Finance Committee? Because it sounded like both were looking at it, and there probably needs to be a single point person in driving this. Is that us?
Well, I'm on both committees, so I'll make sure they consider it too, but I think from what I think I want to be the one to get the information rolled together
I agree.
and get started. And if we can get this initial waiver, then a lot of it will be done, really. Then we'll just comply with these other things as we need to. But we're gonna have to get the initial waiver, or we're looking at not doing 2021 that way.
I'll make a motion then,
Okay.
that the Oversight Committee take the lead in getting approval for a 2021 independent audit of the city's finances.
And can you make minutes for us for this? I don't know if
Second?
I don't know if anybody's listening. Okay, there is a motion. Is there a clerk following this from the clerk's office? to
Yeah,
take-
Joe, I'm here.
Okay.
I just couldn't get pulled up on my computer, so, What is-
I've asked Ann to take some minute notes. Is this okay with you?
sure.
Okay.
Yep,
All
that's
right.
fine.
We have a motion made by Scott Willis and seconded by Jake Gilbert that we have a resolution to seek a 2021 independent audit of the city's financials. Does that summarize your motion properly?
It does.
And your second? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. So I think we've done perhaps what we need to do today. I will get on this. I'm going on vacation with my family for the week of the 3rd, but I hope to have, I don't know whether I'll have we'll have to wait till our next meeting to do it, actually, because the resolution will have to be approved, so,
I have a question.
go ahead.
For the 2020 audit, do we need to make a motion to use the outside independent company?
I would suggest maybe we do, and I'll carry this through to the Finance Committee, because that's gonna be on the day before I leave, I think.
The name of that company was Ad Chisholm, is that right?
Crow Chisholm.
Crow Chisholm, okay.
They are, they did some work for farm, they're a pretty good firm. really.
So then I would make a motion that for the 2020 audit, we conduct a Crow Chisholm audit as approved by the State Board of Accounts.
Okay, is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Gilbert, seconded by Mr. Willis. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. So we've approved basically going into the, I don't want to say the portal, but the form of doing our audits on a long-term basis, basically commercially, by an approved firm. But we are not doing anything that's out of bounds there, because other cities of our size or larger, or smaller probably too, are doing the same thing. So I think we're right at home there. We were kind of encouraged to do the Crow-Chiswick thing by the State Board of Accounts. And I think that's probably a good thing. They won't, their reputation is important to them, and I think they'll do a good job. So, is there anything else that needs to come before the meeting? This next time, I'll try to get I saw it twice. I saw it on both computers. I could not print that this morning, save my soul. So, but anyhow, we'll see if there are any other, it's called the Uniform Control Standards, basically, and I think, isn't it, Jake? He may have it on his phone there, I don't know, but I sure couldn't find it. I couldn't print it. I could find it, but I couldn't print it. But I'm sure there are other things that we need to do. I may seek the state's guidance on, this is done by the State Board of Accounts, so what do you think we ought to do? What you've seen our work and what we do here, what paths should we follow to improve ourselves? I'd like to get somebody else's opinion on that too, and maybe bring some recommendations back to our next meeting. Actually, Jake was chairman of this a year ago when I was appointed, but if Jake wants to be chairman again, he can.
You're doing great, Joe.
I think he's a good man, and so they're very qualified to do it. If there's nothing else, I'll conclude the meeting.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.